says the Senate or the House of Representatives may appoint a committee of its members for such special or general purpose as in its own opinion will be better regulated and managed by means of such a committee, and may, by resolution, regulation or otherwise, as it thinks fit, delegate any function exercisable to it to any such committee, as was done on the floor of this Parliament yesterday and ratified through our votes and proceedings today, Mr. President. Subsection 4 of that same section 62 says, nothing in this section shall be construed as authorizing such house to delegate to a committee the power to decide whether a bill shall be passed into law or to determine any matter which it is empowered to determine by resolution under the provisions of this Constitution. But the committee may be authorized to make recommendations to the Senate or the House on any such matter. Mr. President, the reason for all these constitutional points of order that I have raised is simply because I watched the Arise News last night.
Is that the television or radio?
Arise television news. And what was reported was that this hallowed chamber had suspended further consideration of the tax reform bills before the Senate. The reporter even invited the governor of Nasarawa State and pointedly told the governor that now that the Senate had withdrawn, he used the word withdrawn, this tax reform bills, which Arise News described as conundrum, suggesting that they were confusing, they were problematic. What will you say, Mr. Governor? Are you happy that these bills have been withdrawn? And the governor said, I am not just happy because the bills have been withdrawn, but I'm happy because this will now give us a chance for all of us to discuss. Sir.
Arise News.
Yes, sir.
Asked the governor of Nasarawa State.
Yes.
Whether he was happy.
Yes, sir.
That the tax reform bills
have been
withdrawn by the Senate.
Yes, sir. Mr. President, what am I trying to say here? We do not move from one TV station to another. The privilege that we have is the floor of the Senate. This is where we do our deliberations. This is where we make the law. This is where we do effective representation of our people. And if you have issues to clarify, this is also the floor that we have, rather than issuing press statements. Mr. President, we just passed our votes and proceedings. We have just passed our votes and proceedings, which is a reflection of our deliberations of the previous legislative day, being yesterday. Nowhere in our votes and proceedings was it stated that we suspended further deliberations on the tax reform bill, because we did not. And I felt it would be important to place on record that this Senate did not suspend
or withdraw.
I will address that later, sir. This Senate did not suspend and does not intend to suspend deliberations, consideration of the tax reform bills. As to withdraw, Mr. President, this is simply my response. It was a misunderstanding of the legislative process for anybody to have even reported that we had withdrawn the bills. The bills were executive bills transmitted to us by the executive arm of government through the office of Mr. President. It's only the executive arm that can withdraw these bills. They are not private member bills sponsored by any senator. So no senator is going to withdraw the bill. And there is no reason for these bills to be withdrawn. In the legislative process, it is normal that some people will have concern. It is normal that people will sit around those concerns and discuss. That is why, in its wisdom, this Senate, in referring this matter to the Senate Committee on Finance, gave them as much as 6 weeks. Our instruction was that deliberate, organize, public hearing, and submit your report not later than 6 weeks. It might not be up to 6 weeks, but if they choose to be up to 6 weeks, nobody will quarrel with them. 6 weeks is long enough in a country that wants progress for a consensus to be reached. For anybody who has concern to sit down and allow such concern to be addressed in a variety of public interest. And in any case, Mr. President and distinguished colleagues, we are continuing with the deliberation, with the consideration of this bill. We took all I expected the media to report yesterday, which was well reported by some sections of the media, was that the Senate at its plenary session yesterday took a further legislative action in the consideration of the bill. And what was the further legislative action that we took? From northwest of Adamu Aleros through the north central of Abamoros to the southeast of Ojiuzo Kalus, we drew out people, distinguished senators from each geopolitical zone, and we constituted them into an ad hoc committee to, on our behalf, further interface. We were clear about what we were doing. The Senate Committee on Finance is in charge of public hearing, but we set up an ad hoc committee as a further legislative action to, on our behalf, interface. Even the president of the country, called on us to please, interface with the office of the Attorney General and Minister of Justice, which also we would have done in our public hearing. But even then, the executive requested for that. And we have set up an ad hoc committee to do that. So while the Finance Committee is working on its timeline, planning for the public hearing, we want this committee to also quickly engage. And the Deputy Senate President, yesterday in announcing this committee on your behalf, also said the ad hoc committee should treat this matter with urgency, with this power, and that the meeting should start from today. As a matter of fact, Mr. President, the meeting started yesterday. So the essence of what I am saying is that it's important that members of public are patient with us. They understand the legislative process that we have to follow. They understand our role in the Constitution. Any attempt from any quarter to intimidate the Parliament will be undemocratic. And we will not allow ourselves to be distracted. But we will encourage consensus. We will encourage discussions, engagement at all levels. But we cannot be bullied into adopting a certain procedure. As far as we are concerned, the tax reform bills are alive in this hollow chamber. They are receiving consideration at various levels, and we are open to discussions, to negotiations, to interface. But let it not be said anywhere that we suspended further consideration of these bills. And also it would be laughable for anybody to also think or say or report that the bills were withdrawn. Because like I said, there are executive bills that can only be withdrawn by the executive. And there's no reason to do so. Because these bills, we believe, are in a variety of public interest, and will do everything possible to ensure that across geopolitical interests, across, political parties, across every religious interest, everybody that has concern, civil society, everybody that has concern is given a chance to contribute to the passage of these laws. I thank you, Mr. President, and I conclude by saying that the tax reform bills for us are a work in progress, and we have the next 6 weeks to do this and finalize and pass it. Thank you, Mr. President.
Well, actually, that the votes and proceedings of the Senate in respect of
page 611. Please look at it, page 611. Setting up an ad hoc committee to meet with some members of the executive and headed by the Civil Senator Patrick Akpabio. We should delete or replace the name of Senator Mohammed Tahir Monguno with the name of Senator Kakashewu to represent the Northeast interests. And then we should delete 3B11, including principal officers. Those in support of the motion say aye. Those against say nay. The ayes have it. So please replace Senator Monguno with Senator Kakashewu and delete principal officers. Senator Akpabio, you are still the chairman, and continue your work, and then you revert to the Senate as necessary. Page 612. Page 611, 3B11. When we met in closed session, we said that was before the passage of the second reading, the tax reform bills. We had set up these committees before we read the bill for the second time and committed it to the Committee on Finance for further legislative actions. It was agreed that that committee will, in the event of any gray area, meet with members of the executive. I can recall putting principal officers, because this will also exclude presiding officers. So we had a 10-man committee headed by Senator Akpabio, the minority leader. If we had principal officers, it would be headed by the Senate leader, not by Senator Monguno in terms of seniority. So that will also have to be corrected. Senator Ashiru, you are here. Senator Ashiru, listen to me. It is not just a function of Senator Monguno. It is a function of the fact that when we met in closed session, before we passed the tax reform bills for second reading, before we had second reading, we set up this committee that in the event of gray areas, we will arrange a meeting with, we will arrange a meeting with the necessary quarters of the executive for them to meet and sort out the gray areas and revert to the Senate. There was no time we said principal officers should be members of that committee. That was why we put the minority leader as the chairman. If we said the principal officers should be members of that committee, it is not the minority leader that would have been chairman. Do you now understand me? But, am I speaking the same thing that you took part in? So this is not in line with what we agreed. Otherwise, you would have been. So I would suggest that you request that we change 3B2 to dismiss Senator Kakashewu stand, and then we delete 11 to enable Senator Akpabio remain the chairman of the committee as I agreed in closed session. That was what was agreed. Please, dismiss Senator Oju Takalo.
Mr. President, you are very right. That was what was agreed.
Contention here whatsoever. May I, Mr. President and esteemed colleagues, just move that we delete section 3B. And in doing that, also, that will leave section 3B, that will delete section 3B11. And in doing that, we leave section 3B2 as it is, Senator Mongono. Mr. President, our decision to make the minority leader chairman was to show our transparency.
Sorry, are we disagreeing?
Yes.
Who is the chief whip of the Senate? If it's in the committee that he will be chairman, and that when we met in closed session,
yes,
we did not include principal officers. Therefore, we should delete section 3B2. Senator Mongono should not be in that committee, and then we should delete 3B11, adding all principal officers of the Senate, because the committee is headed by the minority leader. It's very clear. We don't need to replace it with Senator Kaka or anybody.
Yeah, Mr. President.
So we leave it as a 9-man committee headed by Senator Abamoro.
No, one, that would mean the Northeast is not represented at all.
Ranking, you cannot make members of the leadership of the Senate, when the Senate leader is there, minority cannot lead. What we agreed is that Abamoro will be the chairman.
Yes.
And we have met also, the committee met on its own. So you're absolutely right. And we should start doing what is right on the table. You are right, please.
God bless you. So now, leader of the Senate, the committee has met a couple of times. No time that the Senate said that principal officers should be members of that committee. It would not have been headed by Senator Abamoro because of ranking and because of seniority. So you go ahead to correct 3B2.
Mr. President,
request for us to delete.
Mr. President, very distinguished colleagues, I believe actually has been made to the votes and proceedings of Wednesday, 4th December 2024.
The motion has been moved by the
geopolitical zone.
So you can.
And then we adopted the chairman of finance, appropriation, and national planning. Other than that, the 6 members were 1 per geopolitical zone. So, sir, we chose the minority leader. So you actually suggested to show our transparency. That's why we say minority should head. Senator Mongono was brought in, as was announced by you, Your Excellency, to represent the Northeast.
It was an anomaly.
Not as a principal.
I just told you that.
Okay, so we will then substitute Senator Shehu Kaka?
Yes.
Okay.
Replace it with Senator Shehu.
I so move, sir.
Yes, minority leader.
Mongono is automatically a member by virtue of his being a principal officer. Otherwise, it would mean that the Northeast has no designated representative in this committee. That's my observation.
I thought I should even further correct you.